Two Premier League clubs are already gone. Wolves and Burnley have had their relegation confirmed, and now the real question is simple. Who follows them through the trapdoor? The Premier League's own relegation battle update confirms Wolves and Burnley are down, while Tottenham, West Ham and Nottingham Forest have all been dragged into one of the strangest survival fights we've seen in years. But this video is not just about who might go down, it's about 5 Premier League clubs who are in serious danger for very different reasons. Some are fighting relegation, some are fighting chaos, some are fighting their own terrible decisions. So today we're counting down the top 5 Premier League clubs in serious trouble right now, and number 1 might already be doomed. At number 5, Chelsea. Now before anyone starts typing with their forehead, Chelsea are not here because they're in relegation danger. They're here because they're in identity danger. This is a club that should feel powerful, settled, ambitious and frightening. Instead, it often feels like Chelsea are still trying to decide what version of Chelsea they want to be. Recent reports have linked Chelsea with another managerial search, with names like Xabi Alonso, Andoni Iraola and Marco Silva all being discussed, and TalkSport reported that Chelsea had approached Xabi, though he was no longer seen as the main candidate, while also noting their poor league form under interim boss Callum McFarlane. And that's the problem. When a club has spent heavily, changed managers, changed direction, and still looks uncertain, the issue is not just results, it's structure. Chelsea have talent, nobody can deny that. But talent without a clear plan is just expensive decoration. You can have a squad full of potential, but every season, if it feels like another reset, eventually transition stops sounding like a plan and starts sounding like an excuse. Chelsea are not fighting the championship, they're fighting drift. And for a club of Chelsea's size, that's still serious trouble. At number 4, Nottingham Forest. Forest are interesting because they may well survive, but survival alone does not mean everything is fine. The Premier League's relegation update says Forest moved 6 points clear after beating Chelsea, which gives them breathing room, and that matters. They're not in the same immediate danger as West Ham, but Forest still make the list because the bigger picture has been chaotic. This is a club that's spent recent seasons fighting to establish itself properly in the Premier League, and yet the managerial picture has been anything but calm. Transfermarkt's managerial change records for the Premier League show Nottingham Forest among the clubs with mid-season changes, including Sean Dyche and Vitor Pereira listed in their managerial timeline. And that's the concern. Forest might have just enough to get over the line, but long-term Premier League stability is not built on panic, resets and late-season scrambling. If they survive, the temptation will be to say, job done. But is it? Because staying up is only the first layer. The real question is whether Forest are building something sustainable, or whether they're just escaping one fire before walking into another. They have enough quality to survive, but do they have enough structure to grow? And that's why they're here, not because they're doomed, because they're still not settled. At number 3, Tottenham Hotspur. And honestly, this one should feel ridiculous. Tottenham should not be anywhere near a list like this. This is a club with a huge stadium, huge revenue, a global fan base, Premier League pedigree and expectations that should be aimed at Europe, not survival. And yet here we are. Spurs have spent time far too close to the bottom of the table, and at one stage they had to climb above West Ham just to move away from the relegation places. That sentence alone should make everyone at Tottenham uncomfortable. But this is not a small club punching above its weight and having a wobble. This is Tottenham Hotspur. They should not be celebrating distance from the bottom 3. They shouldn't be looking over their shoulder at West Ham. And they shouldn't be having a season where basic survival becomes part of the conversation. That is why this is so serious. A bad run can happen to anyone. Injuries happen, confidence drops, managers come and go, players lose form. But when a club of Spurs' size drops this far, it points to something deeper. recruitment, squad balance, mentality, leadership, football identity. All of it has to be questioned. And what makes Spurs such a fascinating case is that they still have the size and resources to fix it quickly. But if only they are honest about how bad it's been. The worst thing Tottenham could do is survive and pretend this was just one strange season, because if they do that, they learn nothing. This season should be treated like a warning siren, not a blip, not bad luck, not something to sweep under the carpet. A warning. Tottenham are not the most likely club to go down now, but the fact they were even part of this conversation is the problem. At number 2, West Ham United. This is where the danger becomes immediate. West Ham are not dealing with some vague long-term identity issue, they're dealing with the brutal reality of a relegation fight. They've been dragged below Tottenham, and they've been taking damaging defeats at the worst possible time, and their survival hopes no longer feel fully under their own control. That is a nightmare zone, because once your fate depends on other clubs dropping points, the pressure changes completely. Every match becomes a calculation, every goal elsewhere matters, every missed chance feels heavier, every mistake looks twice as costly, and for West Ham, that is a terrible place to be. This is a club that should not be here. They have a huge stadium, they've got a strong fan base, they have recent European success, they have Premier League experience, yet somehow they're fighting to avoid disaster. And that is the real question. How did West Ham get here? Was the recruitment wrong? Was the squad left too thin? Did the club misread the warning signs? Did they wait too long to change something? Or is this just what happens when a club drifts for too long and assumes there will always be 3 worse teams? Because that assumption can kill you in this league. West Ham are not just trying to stay up, they're trying to avoid becoming the story of the season for all the wrong reasons. If they survive, it will be relief, but relief's not progress. And if they go down, it will be a collapse that people talk about for years. Finally, at number 1, Wolves and Burnley. And I'm putting them together because their trouble is no longer a warning. It's confirmed they're already down. For Burnley, the story feels like a familiar Premier League lesson. Getting promoted is one thing, staying up is another entirely. The Championship can reward momentum, togetherness, confidence and a clear system. The Premier League tests all of that under a microscope. If you can't score enough, defend consistently and adapt quickly, the punishment comes fast. And Burnley have just found that out. Whatever the plan was, whatever the intentions were, the reality is simple. They didn't have enough over the course of the season. But Wolves are different. Wolves feel more alarming because they have become established. This was not supposed to be a club just passing through the Premier League. Wolves have had strong squads. They've had European nights, elite players. They've had seasons where they've looked like a club moving in the right direction. So for Wolves, relegation does not just look like failure, it looks like decline. And decline is dangerous because it doesn't always arrive with one huge explosion. Sometimes it's a chain of smaller mistakes. One bad transfer window, one key player not replaced properly, one poor appointment, one thin squad, one injury crisis, one losing run, one dressing room losing belief. Then suddenly the club that looked comfortable is gone. That's why Wolves and Burnley are at number 1, because they show the brutal truth of the Premier League. You do not get endless time to fix your mistakes. You do not get sympathy for having a plan. And you do not get points for history, potential or good intentions. You either survive or you fall. And for Wolves and Burnley, they have fallen. So that's the top 5. Chelsea because instability at a big club is still a crisis. Forest because survival might hide deeper problems. Spurs because a club of that size should never be dragged into this fight. West Ham because their danger is immediate and real. And Wolves and Burnley because their relegation has already been confirmed. But now comes a big question. Who joins them? Because with 2 clubs already down and one place is still open, This is where football becomes cruel. One mistake can change everything. A red card, a missed penalty, late equaliser, a goalkeeper spill, deflection, a result elsewhere that turns the table upside down. That's how seasons collapse. Not always slowly. Sometimes all it takes is one bad afternoon. So let me know in the comments, who is in the biggest trouble right now? Is it West Ham? Have Spurs done enough? Could Forest still get dragged back in? Or is the real crisis actually higher up the table with clubs like Chelsea? Because this season has shown one thing very clearly. Danger is not just at the bottom, it's everywhere. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, subscribe to Fullscope Football and tell me which club you think is heading for disaster next. Because we do not just watch the table, we see the whole game.